Today is the 24th of July. As a child of the 70s and a man who I've watched I've viewed over 100 times seeing Rutger Hauer in a starring or a supporting role in movies on a television or computer screen. And I have to say that today is a sad day. I mourn him. I celebrate his work. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I think as we're sitting here at the cusp of August. Normally, I would be drinking Black Rifle coffee. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I'm powered by Black Rifle coffee. And they love the money. So I wanted to share some thoughts with you that I have. Like I've said before, over the past 5.5 years, the men and women that I grew up with as grandparents have perished. And whenever you move away from your homeland, you probably don't take your entire family with you. You probably will go somewhere and it will be yourself and maybe a loved one, maybe your kids, or maybe your parents, and that's about it. But 2 generations up or down, not going to be it. So that was all phone calls after 2011, 2012. And I have to say that coping with the loss of such inspirational people, even though they might not have ever achieved quote unquote great things, they did great things by being good mentors and by being good emotional guides. And I have to really lay a lot of thanks upon my grandfather on my dad's side because he allowed my father to dream. And that in turn led to me sitting by my father's side as a young boy watching Star Trek in a country house in rural Illinois surrounded by corn. And there was something more than corn. According to that television screen, there was miniatures and there was special effects and there was storylines. And if you allowed yourself to believe this could be just more than a fiction, it was incredible, which is what has spawned the hobby that I have today. As much as I have a love for what's in front of me, I can walk away from it. I don't want to, but I could. When I was about 9 years of age, I watched Blade Runner the first time. I was awestruck. I'd never seen anything like it. We never had anything comparatively close to it, to my knowledge. And it did wonders for me, even though it borrowed a lot of other things from other places, including a sequence from Aliens, which is minor, and if you don't pay attention to it, you lose nothing from the enjoyment of the film. But as I grew into an adult, I began to value everything about the characters in the movie Blade Runner. And I thought Blade Runner was probably one of the more important films that had been released in my lifetime, if not the history of cinema. Now, when you start thinking in terms like that, careful, you have pride. Lose pride. And throughout the narrative of Blade Runner, I started to discover that Rutger Hauer was more of a anti-hero than anything else, and to my own perspective. He seemed to be a character that was very much in tune with the things he wanted to achieve and accomplish, and he would go to great lengths and to severe actions to achieve them. Quite a character, some would call a villain. I would call him driven. I don't want to say he's good or bad. The good guy, Rick Deckard, the more I watch it, the more I don't really care for him. And I really kind of think that 2049's Blade Runner bores the hell out of me because he's kind of like the MacGuffin. And I don't care about him. I don't. He's an interesting character, yes. But the movie is kept vague for a reason. So I'm going to explore just a couple things here and pay tribute to the man who has shaped my capacity for understanding how great characters become more than just a one trick pony or a 2D character on a screen. But Roy Batty was my introduction to where characters didn't have to be good guys or bad guys. And my father and I didn't really get it at the time. And we talked about this movie, we watched it over and over and over again for decades. And whenever I get the chance, I still watch this movie because a lot of its technical mastery is what initially pulls me in. As you can see from my miniature collection, which I need to get to work on, I have to say that the miniatures and the special effects work in that movie are what pulled a young 9-year-old Bruce into the thought that maybe at some point I could create something that would make people's imaginations wander. And it's an interesting concept, this entire thing. But Deckard goes throughout the movie thinking he's doing the right thing. He doesn't really know why. He's just told to go do it. He's just following the arrow. For those of you that are more gamer mentality types, he's just achieving the set goals and objectives given to him. And at the very end, he meets his match. And actually, if it hadn't been for Rachel, he would have been dead first act of the movie. Okay. And he acts like an idiot. He acts like he's got this real issue with treating a woman like a woman should be treated. And it kind of made me think, what's wrong with this guy? He's telling her to kiss me. I want you to kiss me. Worst love scene ever. It totally deposes the Karate Kid courtship scene between Elizabeth Shue and Ralph Macchio, but we'll get into that some other time. And for those of you about going to chew on me about City of Brass, I really need you to just hold on. I'll try to get you a video later tonight. But I have to say that Rutger Hauer is this tour de force in this movie. And the third act, his character blooms. His character becomes the reason why you watched it up to this point. Aside from the gorgeous sets and visuals and some moderately interesting noir-style detective narration from Harrison Ford, Roy Batty becomes this very interesting character who's on a mission to get more time. He's nearing the edge of his usefulness. His body will shut down. In the very last few seconds of the film, he saves Deckard's life. And that entire scene is quite amazing in and of itself because you find out through your own detective work that Rutger Hauer only had maybe 2 more shots before the sun would be up and they would lose that day to shoot. The night had passed and they had failed. And so he improvises. It's not, to my knowledge, if it's a full improvisation or if he just takes the bullet points that are in the script and he hymns something together, which will make celluloid history for decades upon decades. That will probably last into the centuries beyond, 2082, where people will say, Blade Runner is so great. I could see that. But I've got to say that in all honesty, it's tragic because today we lost him, or we got news of the fact we lost him, which nobody's getting out of here alive. Let's side rail for a moment. Nobody here is going to live immortal. Nobody's going to live forever. So for those of you that like the drink, drink. For those of you that like good food, have yourself a half cup of good ice cream. Okay? It's all right to indulge sometimes. Moderation's great. Everything in moderation, including moderation. And that's Terry Pratchett. But what we don't see is that on film, Roy Batty is maybe mid 30s, early 30s, and he's this unstoppable force that's able to either kill Deckard or save him, and save him he does. He gives him this speech about all the things that he's witnessed, and at the very end, it's lost. It's gone. It's over. All the things he's witnessed, all the actions he's done, all those things that brought him to that point, now that point is just a flat line. Roy Batty will no longer interact with the rest of the timeline. And it was a moment that kind of rivets you, and it makes you wonder about your own mortality and what are you going to accomplish. And most of us are going to try to go after things out of pride. Some of us will even succeed at those things, but I'm going to state for the moment that let's try to be humble for just a few seconds. Let's try to go about things in an exploratory way, because if you do things as prescribed by somebody who's been there, done that, you're more than likely going to succeed on the back of their failures or on the back of their studies. And that's good. Sometimes you need to get a run in so you can have a paycheck, or you can have a month where you have power, or you don't have to worry and sweat and go to ramen diets. It's understandable. But don't let fear of failure stop you from doing something that you feel you're destined for. And all those things that Roy Batty had witnessed were passing before his eyes at the very end. He's recanting just snippets of it to Deckard. And what it all boiled down to is that this is somewhat precious. You're not going to have this forever. You get a chance to go at it tomorrow, go for it. Part of living, not just is success, but it's failure. So it's a good idea sometimes to learn, to not be afraid to fail. You're going to fail more often than you succeed anyway, so get out there and do it. Salespeople won't know this. People that have a extroverted job, they'll get that. People that don't have to depend upon their own wiles won't get it at first. But eventually everybody has to. You have to succeed on your own merits. You have to fail on your own merits. Success, more often than not, breeds pride. Failure breeds questions. But it also delivers you experience. And so you're going to be able to figure out how to do things the right way, your way. And it's all right to be a failure for the most part. You see, celebrating the life of Rutger Hauer tonight because of the contributions he's made to my life. Just a hobby modelist, a hobby modeler in the middle of San Antonio. And it's funny because he actually had success. A lot of people were like, well, he never had huge starring roles. Does he really need them? Does he really need them? No, not really. I'm going to remember him. A lot of my associates are going to remember him for movies like Blood of Heroes or Blind Fury, or the part he did as the head vampire in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Majority of people will remember him as Roy Batty, but he had to pay bills before and after that too. He was in Batman from 2006 or 5 with Christian Bale. He had a nice supporting role with that. He was in a TV show in the early 2000s called Lex, which I thought was kind of stupid, but the more you watch it, the more you really start to enjoy it. It's kind of like Red Dwarf. But I have to say that his entire life wasn't based on what starring roles he got. You see, the guy was married, he had a good wife, he had great kids, he had this complete life away from the camera. He had a charity. He was somewhat of a man that believed in environmentalism, which that can be good or bad, according to me. But he didn't seem like the type of person that he would go out and try to get rid of jobs. He seemed like the type of person that just wanted to focus a little bit of activity to where we would try to preserve some things that we could. If we could take 5 or 10 minutes or 5 or 10 pounds or francs or diners or whatever it was that his foundation takes, go ahead and do that, and they would apply it properly. And so instead of lamenting that he wasn't the head vampire in Interview with the Vampire like Anne Frank wanted him to be, or not Anne Frank, Anne Rice. Anne Frank was busy mildewing away. Anyway, Rutger Hauer had these successes off camera, which mean a lot more. To us, probably not a whole lot. Oh, he had a good wife, he had good kids, he had a charity, but in all honesty, when you look at it, it's pretty fucking successful. Because you're only going to stand in front of a camera for maybe 12 or 16 hours a day for maybe 6 months while you hammer out the world's worst movie. Most times, like 3 to 6 weeks for shooting. And then that's over. But he had more. And the guy wasn't a slouch. He was active. He enriched the people's lives around him. And so I don't want to say, he could have been this or he could have done that. No, Rutger Hauer was fine. The guy lived to be 75 years of age. He's from an era of men that 75 was like hitting that stratosphere where you want to end it at, because past that, it's really just kind of downhill, more pills, doctor visits, shitting yourself, drooling. No, he had a short illness and his body took, it's done, it's over. And it's very sad that that happened, but the opportunities he took and the times that he was able to make good happen in the world around him, and you didn't hear the guy's ego. I can't find a single story on the web about Rutger Hauer's inexhaustible ego. It seems like this guy was really just a solid guy, almost like a Jimmy Stewart for Northern European types. And we are missing out because sadly the current crop of actors and actresses in Hollywood, and I roll my eyes because I'm largely disgusted at their antics because they disagree with the majority of Americans. We don't have that level of character being put out there. Hollywood is going Hollywood, and they're shoving an agenda in this culture war upon the majority of Americans, and most people are just now starting to see it. It's sad. I didn't see it until 5 years ago. I knew it was happening, but I thought it was just localized to politics, to the news channels. Oh, that terrible Rush Limbaugh, he made fun of the CNN news anchor. You're going to have that. But now it's gotten to the point where it's infecting the entertainment media. And because phase 4 of Marvel's starting, and thank God for San Diego Comic-Con, they've shown us their whole hand of what they plan on doing to ruin the movie franchise that made them a lot of money from 2008 to 2018. And now we're going to be saddled with a bunch of movies that look pretty bland and uninspiring and maybe red box material. I'm not gonna watch them. I'm already boycotting Disney. I'm done. You're done, fuckers. There's absolutely nothing they have that I want to watch. I've got a stack of VHS and DVD movies I can entertain myself with till the cows come home. But my original statement was that the actors that we have today are nowhere near this character level. Guys like Rutger Hauer are really what I would like to see more of in the world. And sadly, those guys are in their 70s. They're in their upper 60s. They're in their 80s. Or they're already in the ground. This world doesn't have to be so bleak. This world doesn't have to be a downer. I don't mean for this to be a downer. But what I do want to say is that it's a shame that he is gone, but we are really blessed to have had him in our life, to be able to enjoy the works that he was able to give us. For those of us here on this side of the pond, we were able to watch some fine movies, some of them with laughably bad special effects, but he never turned in a bad performance. And he always seemed to enrich the people around him. He never seemed to tear down other actors or say, well, that gaffer sucked. He wasn't that guy. God damn it, Christian Bale. Terminator Salvation. I have to say that I miss Johnny Brown. Finally got a vein of it tapped here in town to where I can get it. So I'm going to be a happy man. But tonight, 24th of July, that was the day we were made aware of his passing. Thank you, Rutger. Thank you for everything you gave us. Thank you for Roy Batty. Thank you for your role in Blind Fury. Thank you for what you did for Blood of Heroes and numerous other media that I'm unaware of. There's 10 films we discussed tonight in various chats where he starred in, and there's not a single negative article about him. There's not a single negative statement from actors at the time saying that he was a camera hog or he had an ego or he demanded caviar every day at 5 p.m. No. So those of you wanting to make a name for yourself, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to be a good person. Don't be afraid to try to put in the extra mile. You want to go out, you can be infamous, which not recommended. But I'm pretty certain Rutger's going to have a film legacy span the ages. If he had lived to his 90s, he'd be very much revered like Christopher Lee. God bless his memory too. All right, guys. That's the end of this video. I need paint. You need to go watch someone else.